First, seconds, performing, non-performing? What the f***? Note buyers, when it seems like you're in this business alone, know Chase, Robert, and the rest of their tribe are at it every week. They're bringing updates from their own note businesses as they work to find, fund, and finish deals. Follow along as they share their grassroots education with you, tuition-free. If you'd like to know more about what they do and to download the entire back catalog, check out NoteMBA.com. Now, here are your hosts, Chase Thompson and Robert Woods.
Feels good to be back in the saddle. So this is good, man. Feels good to be back getting some work done, if nothing else.
Surprised it's so quiet in the background.
You should be. You should be. For those that are not aware or not on our newsletter,
Chase had a new baby.
Yeah. She's delightful. She is absolutely fantastic. It is staggeringly more quiet than with our first one. And her name is Violet. For those, again, that are not on the newsletter, if you're not on the newsletter, please go over to NoteMBA.com and jump into the NoteMBA Insider newsletter. But yeah, her name is Violet. She came on Wednesday of last week, and it was actually the same day our show went live, which was very exciting.
I was trying to get you to delay for a day.
You wanted me to delay the show because you wanted to come out on your birthday.
No, I wanted to delay the baby getting born so we could share a birthday.
Yeah, that's true. 2 for onesies, right? Down at the bowling alley, down at the Chuck E. Cheese. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, 2 for 1 birthday party.
She actually, so for those, again, that are not aware, we were having a home birth, and I delivered my own baby girl. So good times. If there's a raucous story, if you ever catch us at an event, a conference, or anything like that, I will divulge all the secrets and everything like that. But it was a lot of fun delivering my own child, and yeah, it's good times.
We're glad you had a happy, healthy baby. We did miss you in Dallas.
Yes, I was about to segue right into that. So Dallas, you were at a Note event in Dallas. Tell us a little bit about what went down there. You said you were on stage or in front of the audience.
I would
talking
say
for like
in front of the projector. Yeah,
in front of the projector on stage. You know, we need to paint the picture for the listener.
No, it's good, man. I did an hour and a half. Yeah, but the good thing about it was kind of cool. Like when I started, it was funny because I wasn't nervous, but I was like, man, I haven't had to do this since like 2011 when I was like slinging insurance benefits for groups out in LA.
Slanging insurance. So an hour and a half, what could you possibly have covered in an hour and a half?
Ton of stuff. I went over a bunch of my deals from last year. But you know what was exciting about it is that every time I used to present in front of big groups, it was for insurance, and no one cared. They're like, we don't really care. We have to have this meeting once a year. We're only here because we're told to be here.
And you brought donuts, so we're excited.
Yes. Well, yeah, I was like the muffin man back in the day.
There you go.
Yeah, and then instead I'm in a room of like 50 people, and they actually are interested in what you're saying. So it changes the whole desirability level of presenting in front of people. But it was cool. Got to meet a bunch of new investors, experienced investors, but new to the world of defaulted mortgage debt.
Made a lot of good contacts, I assume. Talked a little bit about the show, I hope.
We did. We put in you know what goes on with the group that we hang out with. So I did refer to it as Notemba, and then corrected it to being Note MBA.
Oh, the inside jokes. They never stop. They never stop.
They don't, man.
I like it. No, so that's good. So an hour and a half of Robby slanging note deals is awesome. And totally, I wish I could have been there, and I feel terrible for having missed it. But, you know, had bigger things happening down here in San Antonio, so that's good. And we will catch up in San Diego?
3 weeks? Actually, I just looked at my calendar. I think apparently the 25th.
Right.
Yeah, so that's 1, 2... Well, from today. From when this show comes out, it's 2 weeks.
Right, exactly. So that'll be exciting.
Also exciting, I somehow got myself an invitation to what I like to refer to as the big kid party.
The big kid party. Okay, so let's talk about this.
So I just got back from Dallas, which was good, and I am headed to Fort Lauderdale tomorrow for an IMN conference with executive banking level asset managers. So a lot of CEOs, CFOs in the specialty assets departments. What is this? The title is the
you
fifth
mean
annual.
All the people that we try to friend on LinkedIn If we try
Yes.
to connect with on LinkedIn, are actually going to be in the room, is what you're saying.
It is the 5th annual Bank and Financial Institution Special Asset Executive Conference on Workouts. It's a mouthful.
That's the most. I mean, look. They don't specialize in acronyms. They specialize in doing deals and getting business done. So that's cool. I can dig it.
Exactly. Well, you know what's better about that is because I'm going to go down there and see Bill Bymel and Joe Da Silva. And what's better about that is the asset that we did our case study on last week, I actually acquired through RSI Asset Management, who Joe is the trader for, and Bill Bymel is the founder of RSI. And he's actually our interview for the week. So we are going to you had a chance to interview him. And this interview, actually, I got to clarify one thing when I broke it down, is from fourth quarter of last year. But I think it is very fitting for where the show's at now. So I think
I foresaw having a baby. And then I was like, we need to get a really great, experienced voice from the industry in here right around the time the baby comes. I think,
and then time it perfectly to where you're going to go meet him at a conference in South Florida.
I'm a magician. I am a podcast magician, if I do say so myself.
I love it. So yeah, so it's a pretty awesome interview. I got to listen to it again today. It's like the third time I've listened to it, so it's cool. And I think there's a little bit of high level stuff. Bill's into some pretty big kid stuff, but at the end, he definitely hits on more than a few topics that apply to, I think, our mainstream listener at this point.
Yeah, he's definitely a crazy character. If you've listened to the Joel interview or the Mark Gold interview, if you haven't, go back and check those out. It's very much like those interviews. We dive in deep and we get to know the person, and then they really start to disseminate some really great stuff about the industry themselves and how you can continue to build and grow your business in it, right? I mean, it's good stuff.
Yes, for sure. And we've never done this, and this might be cheesy, but I'm going to send a $15 Starbucks gift certificate to who can ever tell me what Jared Leto, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Bill Bymel have in common.
That is awesome. Let's get into the interview.
Take it away, buddy.
My name is Bill Bymel. I am the founder of a company called RSI Asset Management. We founded RSI in late 2008, early 2009, specifically for the purposes of investing in and third-party subservicing non-performing mortgages in the residential space.
So that is a mouthful. That is a ton of, for those that are not familiar with this space, that is a lot of stuff to have to know about. So one of the things I like to do, get started with, number one, I was a huge comic book fan. I've mentioned this numerous times now on the podcast. Super nerd with the comic book fan, but I was always more intrigued by the origin story than necessarily the superpowers. So for me, that was always much more intriguing. Let's talk about that. Like your origin story, right? I mean, I think a lot of people in this business either got started super late because they had some money, or they were like 18, walking blind, trying to, find their way through the forest of real estate and then landed somewhere. So do you fall somewhere in between, or do you hit one of those right on the head?
Should I go back to birth? Or?
Right, yeah. We want to know like crib to like when you got your race car bed. Like those are the spaces I want to cover.
Those are the most important.
Yeah, those are the spaces I definitely want to cover.
Foundation years.
Right, exactly.
Well, I grew up in real estate in the sense that my father was a residential real estate broker in Florida. So I spent my first 15, 20 years of my life listening to him talk about real estate in South Florida, what a great investment it was, listening to him talk about how to sell real estate, how to value real estate. And the funny thing is that I lived a very middle-class life. My parents struggled to put me through private school so that I could have a good higher education. But other than that, I was the kid that was driving the hand-me-down car, riding my bike to school, etc. As a matter of fact, my first car was a 1976 Cadillac Seville, and everyone else in my private school was driving brand new BMWs. So they used to call mine the Pimp Mobile.
Nice.
Red with the white top. I actually went to NYU film school. That's where my career was headed towards being a film producer.
Now I know why we get along so well. That's,
oh, really?
Yeah. I was like into theater and film and all that kind of stuff in school. So
right.
For sure.
So I actually had a lot of success coming out of film school. We won the NYU Film Festival. We won a Student Academy Award. We went to Sundance. I ended up getting a feature film deal called Highway, which I was the associate producer of. 4 of the 5 directors that I worked with out of NYU actually went on to make major motion pictures in Hollywood. So I had a pretty successful early career, but I grew up in a New York film environment, and then made my way out to LA and hated it. Have you heard this story before?
No. Yeah, no, I've been out there.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You're sort of telling my story just without as much success
right.
in the offset. Yeah.
So we, we did a movie for New Line, this movie Highway. I ended up with a deal to be a creative exec for a production company called Independent Pictures. I had a cushy job on the studio lot. I was a studio executive in my early 20s, and I absolutely hated it. I hated what the film business was about.
Sure.
I hated the fact that 95% of the people in that business were there, basically making their money off of the 5% of talent in the business. So
sure.
So I took a break from that. Was on my way back to New York in 2002. I drove cross country. I stopped back in Florida to see my parents, and my father somehow convinced me to stay in Florida and get into real estate.
I mean, he had been seriously grooming you for many years too,
which I unaware of to me at the time.
He was hypnotizing you to get into it, right? He was subconsciously working you over. So you stopped back in and set up a shop.
Stopped back in, got my real estate brokerage license. The one thing that agent's license, 1 year later, I became a broker. By 2003, I was a broker, had my own office with about 20 agents under me. Started an REO business at that point, but before there really was a lot of REO, I was doing deals for, WAMU and doing some lit and loan servicing. I don't know if you've heard of that company. They're no longer around. And the one thing I wanted to do differently than my father was I wanted to actually invest in real estate. I wanted to practice what he preached. He was
I was
always
going to say, okay, so, yeah.
So he was a preacher of real estate investment, but he never really had the balls to really, put his money where his mouth was. So our investments were limited in that response. As a matter of fact, I remember a story about him telling me where he had an opportunity to buy our first house 2 doors down from my grandparents, which was a little 2-1 in, by the train tracks, or he could have spent that same $30,000 on a lot on Las Olas Isles, which is now the house is still worth about $100,000. He sold it obviously back in the 80s for like $70,000. It's probably worth $150,000 now. The lot alone would have been worth $1.5 million. And so,
wow.
So I was like, Dad, he's like, well, it was just a lot. We wouldn't have been able to live there. I'm like, Dad, we would have pitched a tent.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
But it was an interesting experience for me to kind of see that stuff.
Now you would have just done both. You would have
exactly in retrospect. So I got into buying and flipping right away. In 2003 to 2005 was obviously a good time for that, especially in Florida. I was buying stuff at 102% of value, and by the time I got it rehabbed, it was at 9. I was able to make a spread. It was like crazy.
Sure.
So, so I ended up leaving residential real estate. I sold my business in 2005. It was not any hair genius on my part, just by accident. I had an opportunity to go into commercial real estate, and I hooked up with my partner, which was with a company called Retail Sites International. And our specialty on the commercial side is working with restaurants and retailers, brand names, nationally traded companies, We do that. We represent companies like Darden Restaurants, McDonald's. I don't know if you've heard of BJ's Restaurant and Brew House.
BJ's is one of my favorite restaurants here in town. Love BJ's.
Exactly. So BJ's, for instance, is a brand that I have. I designed their expansion plan for Southeast Florida. We just opened up our 5th location down here, and we kind of put together a 15-store plan for the next 5 years, and we're kind of trying to execute that. So I was doing
regionally.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
It's just in South. We really specialize in Southeast Florida, just like
Cool.
and my partner has done every Darden restaurant in Southeast Florida. So every Olive Garden, Seasons 52, Bahama Breeze, Red Lobster that you go into in our area is a deal that he's done over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And we've done things like Whole Foods, we've done CVS's. That's the kind of retail and restaurant thing that we do. So our company, RSI Asset Management, the RSI comes from Retail Sites International. That was like our nickname. In 2008, I got a call from an asset manager out in California, and we were right in the midst of obviously a major residential real estate crisis meltdown. Exactly. Yeah. And it was in the summer, so it was even before the market really took its tank in that fall. But obviously things were on the way down at that point. And this asset manager was a part of a small fund at the time. There was about 20 guys that had gotten together, and they had an opportunity to purchase non-performing loans in Port St. Lucie. And Port St. Lucie was kind of ground zero for the foreclosure crisis in Florida and nationwide at that time. In terms of the huge amount of defaults, there was so much speculation. Guys all over the country were buying houses sight unseen, and so their question was, they were sitting on all these $200,000 to $300,000 mortgages that were in default, and what were they worth? But to me, it was like a light bulb going off. I had always heard I had friends, especially in commercial real estate, who had become millionaires off of one deal in the RTC days, going out and buying centers that, for pennies on the dollar. So the opportunity to buy residential mortgages for pennies on the dollar seemed like that new RTC wave, that opportunity for us to take advantage of it. And it was very early in the crisis. So the reason they got my name was I came from that REO background. So I was somewhere on a list of REO brokers. I ended up getting in bed with them. We did valuation due diligence on about 300 homes in Port St. Lucie. They ended up buying about 1,000 mortgages just in the PSL area within like a 10-mile radius.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were paying, in the 40s and 50s. It was one of the first early trades, so it was like in the 40s and 50s of value, so
even at that bulk purchase.
Even at that bulk purchase, they were at 40s to 50s of value, but they were like, let's say 45% of BPO. But that really translated to like, 18 to 23 cents of the unpaid principal balance of the mortgage.
Sure.
Because you had properties at the end there. You had land that was selling for $100,000 to $150,000 for a lot, and then they were putting another $200,000 house on it. And at the point that a year later, those things were worth $110,000 all in.
Oh my god!
So it was like it was a pretty dramatic drop in value, 60 to 70% drop. And their worry was, well, is there a buyer for it? Well, a brand new construction CBS 2,000 square foot home that you can pick up for $110,000. There weren't a lot of end users buying at that time because there wasn't any financing, but there were smart investors all day long that were picking up, and so 60 to 70% of our deals were cash deals. And it's kind of continued that way in South Florida ever since. We've actually seen, I saw an article in South Florida Business Journal this week that Fort Lauderdale, Florida is number one in the country in terms of the percentage of sales that were cash deals last month. So there's still a lot of cash coming into South Florida. As I think people realize, look, no income tax state. You've got obviously the seasonality aspect with people that want to vacation here, and it's just a great place to live. So Florida's obviously bounced back tremendously. I went to work with this group. I did loss mitigation, valuation, due diligence. We took it all the way through to the REO stage. What my REO background combined with the ability to talk to people, I really ended up guiding a lot of those asset managers at this fund in through the loss mitigation process, through how to talk to borrowers, because for them, a lot of these guys, ironically enough, were former loan officers.
They always are. I mean, that's the business I came from. That's the business I was in. Mortgage banking and what have you. So yeah, I don't want to say they always are like therapy people, but some of them just needed something to do, or understood. When I first heard about notes, it was the same way. It was like, oh, I get this. Right. There was no weird. For some people, it's like this weird. I'm like, wait, I'm buying paper, not the home. Like it's this, kind of an awkward thing. For these kind of guys, they just get it immediately. Right. They get it.
Exactly. So but a lot of them knew how to originate loans. They didn't know how to mitigate.
Yeah, I know how to start a fire. I don't know how to put it out, though.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So it was fun because they relied upon me, and it really built up my reputation within the distressed real estate and mortgage market very, very quickly. And a lot of those guys are no longer with this company, and they've gone on to work for other funds. And one of them actually came to work for me and is handling all of my book outside of the state of Florida and New York. So the experience was quite interesting, to say the least. It was funny to see guys who had originated loans and opening up a file and saying, "Hey, I think I did this loan."
I recognize this street name. I don't know if it was this guy or this guy. And, some dudes and some ladies that I know during that time weren't, I'm not going to be friends with them now. They just weren't, they were unscrupulous people, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of what people don't understand is a lot of people in that scenario were not necessarily doing what they were told, but doing what they were allowed to do. They weren't trying to be bad people. They weren't trying to put people in a bad situation or whatever the case is.
Exactly.
They just they said, "Here's all this money. Lend all this money. We're loosening the reins. Have at it." Right. So that is something that I think a lot of people outside of this industry just don't get. Sure, there's bad people everywhere, whatever. But for the most part, some people are just like, "You don't need me to report X, Y, and Z. Then I guess I don't need to report X, Y, and Z. Like, let's just do this deal, right? Like, this guy says he makes $1 million a year. Who am I to question it?" Right. He walked in with Tivas and, thong sandals or whatever. So, I mean, again, you said a ton of things. I mean, you started in the movie business and now you're out here doing this, right? I guess.
And I've picked up some other funds along the way, and now I manage about at any given time, $50 to $80 million worth of real estate in some form of mortgage, whether it's reperforming, sub-performing, non-performing, and then the non-performing, we guide our borrowers through the loss mitigation process in a very unique way, different than any of the real banks and servicers.
Sure.
And even the private funds that are out there buying these loans in distress, I've had some interactions with many of them, and they don't even get it. They don't even realize that they're in a gold mine opportunity to be able to help the real estate market, help people either stay in their homes or walk away from their debt, and then in turn make a lot of money doing so. And they get stuck on their own internal policies that prevent them.
So for you, when you're saying unique way, all this, that, or the other, are you, I mean, if like proprietary softwares, I don't know what the unique ways, but are you saying that like some people maybe give up on people too soon, and you might hold their hands longer because you know that the payoff is greater,
Right.
or is that kind of what you're saying? I mean,
yes, absolutely. When I speak about loss mitigation and servicer surveillance, which is really the what we spend most of our time doing, it's about finding ways to work individually with each borrower.
Sure.
And the mortgage servicing business is just not set up to do that. You've got even when there are individual asset managers working files, they're working hundreds and sometimes thousands of files. And so they have and their bosses put together a game plan, and they put together a set of rules that on paper make sense to them, but in reality don't necessarily jive with what could work for a borrower. You could have a situation where the borrower has the money or has the income to reperform on a modified loan, but because they maybe can't document that, or in terms of W-2s,
sure,
maybe they're
whatever the case may be,
a contractor. It's like, don't take all these. Don't put yourself in a box.
Right.
If a borrower needs 60 days to get out of a home, if the borrower is willing to consent to a judgment, especially in judicial states like Florida, where the foreclosure process can really stand in the way of your profits.
Well, and you said something about New York just a second ago.
Right.
That is a tremendously difficult state for a lot of people to pick up. I mean, it's almost, I don't want to say it's easy pickings there, but if you don't know what you're doing, you just can't you can't go in there, because it will kick you, it'll eat you up, spit you out, and I mean, it's tough.
It's absolutely, the borrowers it is a very borrower friendly state, especially in the boroughs of New York City. There are a lot of guys that know how to work the system,
like professionals at staying in their house. I mean, good Lord.
And there are guys that go out and make deals with borrowers too. So there's guys who go out there and there's sketchy stuff that goes on, but it's not against the law. Guys are buying deeds from people for huge dollar amounts, knowing that they can drag something on for 2, 3, 4 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that puts them in a position of either being able to rent skim the property or negotiate a really sweetheart deal with the lender that is
right. Whoever picked up the property. So for a lot of people that may have stumbled upon, they tripped over themselves and fell into this podcast episode. That are not maybe currently investing in notes. They know what notes are. They have no idea what notes are. What would you say is kind of the first step in your mind now, with kind of all that you've seen, all that for someone that, maybe they're kind of fix and flipping a little bit now,
right,
or they're heavily into fix and flipping. Where would they start? Where would you start if you're them? You don't have film background. No, I'm kidding. But, you don't have maybe the background you have. You've got a dad or a mom that's been preaching about real estate investing to you. Where would you start?
It's a very good question. There are a couple of things that I preach with regard to getting going. One of them is, and they're not necessarily in this order, but one is, first of all, to know who you're buying your first note from, and to find a good connection for someone who has integrity. A group. There are a couple of groups. My company sells individual notes. We don't have a huge inventory, so stuff comes and goes pretty quickly.
Do y'all have exchanges? Y'all have tapes? How do y'all?
Yeah, we do it on an individual basis. We send out tapes. People have to come get registered with us, sign an NDA. They fill out a buyer profile, and then we have a gentleman named Joe Da Silva whose job it is to delineate opportunities to various investors.
Now, to anybody listening, none of what he just said is off the beat. People hear NDA, they hear all of these things. None of that is. I mean, that's fairly standard.
Correct.
For most, places you're going to be picking them up from.
Correct. Yeah. So, the first most important part is know who you're buying from. There's a lot of there's a lot of people on the internet that the internets, as
yes,
George,
the internets, right?
That are claiming to control the loans, and they want this plus this, and they want an LOI with a down payment, deposit, non-refundable, et cetera, et cetera. Be skeptical of that. Anybody that's legitimate in this business is going to have an open book in the deal. One of the things that I found very interesting with the secondary mortgage market, the arena in which we buy and sell notes, is that guys do multi-million-dollar trades on a yes/no handshake.
So now a lot of people that I've interviewed have said kind of what you just said, that they talk about the transparency of this business, or in essence, where I was about to go with what you were saying was, it's almost like the more open somebody is, the more likely they're not
more legitimate they are.
Yeah, it's like they're more legitimate there. They're like, oh, here's our tape, whatever. And I'm like, I'm looking at 17, a pool of 17 loans here. Like, you just talk almost like you have it because you do. The second you're like, well, how about you proof up your fund? And all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
Give me an LOI and proof of funds before I even show you anything.
And all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that is fascinating to me. Is that just an organic way the business has moved? Has in your experience, it's always been there? Why is that?
It's because the secondary mortgage market traditionally was stock traders. So guys that are licensed.
They're already used to just writing something on paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A piece of paper, a million shares here, boom, send it off. And so the market comes from that world where guys don't have the time, because the market moves so quickly that they don't have the time to write a contract for each. If we had to write a contract and due diligence on every stock we bought and sold,
sure.
There would be no fluidity to the market. That's what makes it the purest form of capitalism. And so that's kind of similar in that sense, because these guys, that's the kind of guys that work in that industry. They're used to doing deals on a yes, no. Sure. And they know that if the minute that they break their word with somebody, they're going to get blacklisted and they're not going to do another deal. So what's the point of burning one bridge when there's possibly millions of dollars in fees and in opportunity that lies ahead?
And it's such a small community that the second I do something I'm not supposed to do, it's over. It's over. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to go, hey, Bill, do you know Chase? Da, 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 da. And you're going to be like, yeah, that guy is up. And it's over, right? Like, there's no reason to be that guy.
Well, that's
at the end of the rainbow?
Exactly. And that's one of the other points that I make for no buyers is number two is to be completely honest about what your focuses are and what your financial limits are. Don't come in and ask for somebody to show you a tape of 50 loans if you only want to buy one.
Right.
And then the other factor in all that. So you, just like you want your seller to be open and honest with you, you have to be open and honest with them. Integrity plays a real big role in all of this. But the other most important aspect is not to get bogged down too much in the minutia of each file. And at the end of the day, you kind of got to jump in. It's like at some point your dad lets go of the bike and you got to wobble a little bit.
Right.
And even after I had mitigated 150 loans for a fund, my first loan I bought, I ended up losing $5,000 on. And now there was a legitimate reason I ended up with an HOA that was breaking the law and I had to sue them. So but it was a learning experience for me. And
it's cheaper than college, I suppose. I mean,
you went to exactly. It's cheaper than my college loan balance today, even.
Exactly. So, and that was kind of the next, again, be respectful of your time. Just a few last questions that we have, but kind of the question that I like to ask a lot of people is, number one, take me to a deal that was one of your sweeter deals, right?
Yeah.
Take me to a deal, not necessarily your best deal, but in your mind, what is that one deal that was just, you love to tell the story of?
Gosh, I have quite a few. I've got to.
Oh, now he's bragging.
I got to tell you, it's been a fun couple of years.
Exactly.
Well, okay. So there's two types of deals. There's a deal that I'm most proud. There's deals that I'm most proud of for my own pocketbook.
Sure.
And those are things like a loan that I picked up where the seller had the property valued at $70,000. I had a hunch the property was worth more like $110,000. It was 3 houses on one lot. I ended up, it was, that was a rental property, and I ended up picking up the loan for about, it was, I think, $30,000, $35,000 for the loan.
Blew a ton of people's minds.
Yeah.
Even one house at $70K, picking it up for $30, deal's already pretty sweet. For most people.
It was already looking good.
Yeah.
We ended up making a deal with the borrower to consent to final judgment because there were some junior liens behind us, so we needed to clear title. She went ahead and we gave her $5,000 in order to do that. She was rent skimming, so that would have been the equivalent of about 3 more months of rent for her. Mm-hmm. We handed it to her in one fell swoop. We wiped away any further deficiency. I think she owed $300,000 on the thing, and we put it on the market at $160 just to test the waters. And we ended up selling it for $150, and that was in a period of less. So that was like the sweetheart. Look, not every deal is like that, right?
Exactly. You always have to say that, but they happen.
Right. It does happen. Yeah, it does happen, and it happens when you do numbers. So the more you do, the more the greater the chance that something like that's going to come along.
Sure.
And it makes up for the deals like that first condo I bought and I lost $5,000. It's great because now I turned around on this deal and made $100,000 on a $50,000 total investment.
Right. That's incredible.
So but what I'm most proud of is some of the stuff that we're doing for our fund right now, and we have really shifted our focus. Early on in 2009, 2010, when we first got into this business, there was really no certainty that if we started reperforming people, putting them into loan modifications, that we'd ever be able to get out of those loans. We didn't know where the market was.
Right.
No one was buying reperforming loans. They were barely buying performing loans at the time. So the secondary market had really turned around about 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And all of a sudden, some of the large hedge funds and pension funds got into these reperforming loans.
And it's a good deal. 99% of the time when they're reperforming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The default rates, now the key to them was how you reperform a loan. Do you just kick the can down the road the way a HAMP program does, and you just put all the balance on the back? Because you have a much higher redefault rate with something like that versus what we do. So what we've done recently in the last couple of years is we've really shifted the focus on our owner-occupied properties to trying to help people stay in their homes. So it becomes a huge win-win, and that's kind of a philosophy that we all operate is under this idea of let's make this a win-win situation. For example, a gentleman had been afraid to answer the front door or pick up the phone. We asked his attorney, please just bring him to a mediation. Let's sit down across the table from each other and let's talk it through. The guy this was only a month ago. I sat down. The gentleman owed about $1.5 million. It was a 5,000 square foot estate home out on 5 acres out in the acreage area of western Palm Beach County. He built the house. He was in real estate, so he knew the market. He probably owed a little more than $1.5 million. Maybe it was about $1.4 million, $1.5 million that he owed. I think of original principal was like 1.2, and he hadn't made a payment in a number of years, so it was racking up. He was shaking at the mediation because this is a man who had never, and I believed him when he said this, that he had never missed any payment on any debt in his entire life until this mortgage. And so to him, it was like a huge embarrassment to him. And I very quickly and calmly dispelled of any judgment. I said, look, Mr. X, I really don't want you to think that we're here to judge you in any way. We are really about the win-win. I think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to you that we bought this loan, and we're gonna make a deal for you here today. So what we were able to do was we were able to we looked at the current value of the property, which we thought was somewhere between $850 and $1 million, and he owed $1.4 million. So we made a deal with him to lower his principal balance to $900,000. We wiped away about $600,000 in principal, back interest, fees, escrows, and put him into a 6-month trial to mod. The trial locks him into a mod as long as he makes his first 6 payments on time. It's not one of those Wells Fargo banks. We'll put you in a forbearance, and then on month 5 they say you're not qualified for the mod.
Right.
This is a real deal. And here's a guy that was in tears at the end of the hour and a half. One of the things he said to me was at the beginning was, when I built this house, I figured I would die in this house. This is a house and now I don't know what's going on. I mean, this is a house I want to live in the rest of my life. And I said to him, Mr. X, this is we want that for you.
Sure.
And let's make this a win-win situation. Now, what he didn't know is that I had valued the property internally at $850. So, and I think we had paid about 70% of that. So we paid about $600,000 for the loan. So we paid a little less than 50% of what was owed on it. And here he is reperforming at $900,000 principal balance. He's making payments. He's on his second payment coming up. He has he wants to give me a letter of recommendation. He wants to do testimonials for us. Anything he can do for us. Those are the kind of things that make me most proud of the business that I'm in. The ability to keep people in their homes, do what banks are unwilling to do, even though it's the most logical thing to do.
And incapable, don't have the bandwidth for all of that. And what I am hearing interview after interview after interview is exactly what you're saying. It's almost like you can't be in this business, truly in this business for longer than 12 months if you're doing it right and not have that story. Right?
Exactly.
You have more zeros behind your version than I have behind mine, but it's all the same, right? I mean, it's whether you're keeping someone in the $50,000 house or the $1 million house, when you find them, they're motivated. They can't believe what they've got themselves into. And so they're just so happy about it.
Yeah. I've got the same situation at the $50,000 level all day long. I've got a loan in Jacksonville I own personally. The principal balance was 74. She probably owed like 90 on it. The house I thought was worth 35, 45, maybe 50,000. So we asked her to come up with enough money to cover taxes and insurance, which obviously the lender were forced placing, and as her first payment. And we reduced her principal down to $50,000 and wiped away all those fees. No 1099, nothing. And this is a woman who's been employed at the same job for 10 years. She got into a high interest loan, and she almost lost her home. And if a bank was still holding on to that mortgage, she'd be out of there.
Yep.
And so for me, it was a great deal because I bought the loan for $20,000. So now I've got a reperforming first mortgage at face value of $50,000, bringing in a monthly cash flow, and 6 to 12 months down the road, I could probably sell it for 40. And that's the kind of trades that are going on, at least 40,000.
Sure.
The secondary market for reperformers is in the 80s of value.
Any last parting shots, either for the veteran note investor or the new note investor, aside from just jump in? Is that it? Is that
it really comes down to jump in, but has always been what my mode of operation since day one, and it's been my success from college on, is find somebody that is doing it right. So find someone to follow, to be your mentor, to learn from, somebody that has done it successfully and is willing to shepherd you through the process. And then don't get involved in the nitty gritty of each deal. What ifs. Jump in. And if you have the right guidance, if you have somebody like a Scott Carson, or you have somebody like us, we try to help our investors out. We're very open, and as long as you don't take up too much of my time, I'm willing to answer questions. And look for opportunities like to be shepherded and just give it a shot. You can't really lose.
That's incredible. That's super cool. Where can they find you, reach you? We'll obviously link up all this stuff down in the show notes, but just let them know real quick where they can reach you at.
My website is RSI Asset ASSET.com. And my name, Bill Bymel, Bill Bymel at RSIasset.com is the email address. But if you go to our website, we've got our phone number right there, right on the upper right-hand corner. They can give us a call, shoot us an email. They can fill out an inquiry online, and either myself or one of my staff will get in touch.
So I did the interview with him, and I have literally no idea what Jake Gyllenhaal, what's his name? Lead singer to Jared Leto and Bill Bymel have in common. Jared Leto, Jake Gyllenhaal, Bill Bymel.
Bill.
There's a $15 gift card on the line for this. Literally, I have no idea. And I talked with the guy. This is crazy. This is good. I like this. Very interactive with the audience. We hope you guys got a ton of value out of it. Bill is such a cool cat. He's as low-key as he is, high level when it comes to all this stuff. And so just getting the opportunity to sit and talk with him was great. If you see him at an event, Robby's about to see him at an event, if you get a chance, pull him aside, ask him questions. I mean, he's a really, really cool guy, and he is as down-to-earth as it comes with helping people try to really win in this business.
So, we just wanted to bring another person from our network out there and realize that, as close as we are to each other, there's so many more people out there that are willing to help in this business. And we're just going to keep finding them for us and bringing them out here to you. I have to throw a thank you out to Scott Carson. My birthday was over the week while we were in Dallas, and Scott took me to a Dallas Stars game for my birthday. So, Mr. Carson, thank you again. I had a blast. And
so, as always, some people have already sent me some congratulatory emails and things like that on the baby. I appreciate that, just kind of as a big, blanket statement. But I will also send everybody personalized thank yous and all that kind of stuff. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for continuing to send in your questions at ask@nodemba.com. Thank you for continuing to rate and review us over on iTunes. We love you guys. We'll keep bringing you the great content. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch you next week. Thanks.
Bye-bye.